Stocks on Wall Street retreated from record levels to end the session lower as investors await the big Federal Reserve decision later today. The Dow sheds 125 points. Markets in Asia trade mixed. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a higher start for our own Indian markets. Crude oil prices rise 1%, extending their rally due to supply risks in Russia. Gold prices head to uncharted territory, rising past $3,700 an ounce on Fed rate cut bets. India and the United States held positive negotiations, says the Commerce Ministry, and the US Embassy. Top US negotiator Brendan Lynch visited New Delhi for the first time since US imposed 50% tariffs. India's Commerce Ministry says efforts will be intensified to achieve an early conclusion of a trade agreement. As trade talks accelerate, US President Trump dials PM Modi to wish him on his 75th birthday. PM Modi says he is committed to taking India-US comprehensive and global partnership to new heights, adds India supports Trump's initiatives towards a peaceful resolution of the Ukraine conflict. Well, good morning in the Mumbai News Centre. I'm Vamakshi Doria and you're watching Power Breakfast. First up, let's take a look at what the Asian markets are doing. Well, to begin with, the handover that came in from Wall Street was not all that great. All three indices, retreated. They ended in the red, and the screen in Asia is reflecting that as well. It's a mixed-looking screen as far as Asia is concerned. What's not doing well is the Kospi. It's down almost over 1%. Taiwan is also down around 0.5%, and Shanghai too is trading flat but with a negative bias. But on the flip side, what's doing well is the Hang Seng. That's up almost 0.7%. Other than that, the Nikkei also is managing to inch towards the 45,000 mark. It's up almost 0.2%. The GIFT Nifty will also come up for you on the screen. For now, it's a positive start that is indicated for our own Indian market. But how will all of these cues impact our own Indian markets? We have our research team joining in with how the trade setup looks like and the stocks that are likely to be in the news. First up, Hormaz joins in to get us all the market cues we need to watch out for today. Hormaz, good morning.
Good morning, Vamakshi. The good news first, the Nifty has a new swing high. It finally managed to cross that level yesterday of 25,154, and now 25,260 is the new swing high for the Nifty. The good part, Nifty ended at the day's high. The Nifty Bank, we mentioned yesterday that will be the index to watch out for, and it did propel the Nifty higher, breaking above the mark of 55,000, and that too closed at the highest point or near the highest point of the day. Now, what happens next is the fact that what will also please the bulls is that every dip that happened intraday yesterday was bought into. The index heavyweights contributed to the gains, be it private financials, Kotak, Axis, HDFC, be it Reliance, be it TCS from the IT pack. All of them contributed to putting the Nifty higher in yesterday's session. And the other one, of course, is the FIIs turning net buyers in yesterday's trading session. That will also please the bulls as well. Now, what happens for the levels to watch? The Nifty has now closed very close to that 25,250 level, which was the resistance band somewhere in mid of July, from where the index fell towards the August lows, and then they moved higher after the Prime Minister's Independence Day address. The next important level is 25,300, of course, and the July 9th high of 25,550, which is, of course, some distance away. For the Nifty Bank, that is the trending index. It has gained every single day in September, barring one. So keep an eye out on the Nifty Bank. 55,300 and 55,700 on the upside are the two important levels to watch today. Keep an eye out on PSU banks, of course, from remarks from the DFS Secretary yesterday, the US Fed decision, the all-important one later tonight, and of course, whether this FII buy figure is just a flash in the pan or it's sustained buying, that remains to be seen. For now, the GIFT Nifty is indicating a positive start to the trading session. It remains to be seen whether the Nifty does manage to cross 25,300 and move higher from there on.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Hormaz. Indeed, we will be watching out for all of those cues going into trade today. And of course, we did have the comments that came in from PM Modi. So, some positive rub-off probably from that particular, but take a look at the Hang Seng. It is, slightly building on to the gains. Kospi is, has further declined down over 1% now. Asia is largely mixed. But, over to Sudarshan now, who's joining in with cues from the F&O space. Sudarshan, over to you.
Good morning, Mamakshi. So yesterday it was a day of massive short covering and even fresh buying was seen in majority of the stocks, and that helped Nifty close above 25,200. And also it was led by financial space. After several days, we saw fresh buying coming in Nifty Bank and just Nifty IT, though index was in the green, but ahead of Fed meeting and that outcome that we are expecting tonight. So IT stocks will be in focus not only in today's session but also tomorrow. GIFT Nifty on the 75th birthday of Prime Minister is indicating a start with minor gains. And as far as flows are concerned, FIs continue to remain on the buy side. Yesterday also in the cash market, we have seen FIs buying more than 300 crore. Even DIs have bought more than rupees 1,500 crore. And FIs long exposure remains around 12%. In the index futures too, we saw FIs buying more than 2,200 crore. And good part was they have reduced short positions massively. Yesterday, we saw FIs reducing short positions by almost 12,000 contracts. On the option front, on the call side, if you see 25,200 and 25,300 call options are very healthy. And at the same time, we've seen an increase in the premium. As far as put was concerned, 25,200 put has seen an addition of more than 42 lakh share. Levels for Nifty, support remains around intraday low that yesterday's low of Nifty that was 25,070. First resistance, 25,250. If we cross that, next resistance comes around 25,350. For Nifty Bank, support 54,800. Resistance that is 50-day and 100-day moving average, and that is 55,630 to 650. Lastly, stocks in the band. 4 stocks are there: RBL Bank, OFSS, HFCL and Angel One.
All right. Thank you so much for bringing us all of those cues, Sudarshan. But over to Ria now. We'll list out all the stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. Ria, over to you.
Well, yes, good morning. First, taking a look at Amber Enterprises, they have opened their rupees 1,200 crore QIP, approving the floor price at rupees 7,790.8 per share. For Jindal Steel, the group entity Jindal Steel International is going to enter into discussions with ThyssenKrupp AG to acquire its steel segment, ThyssenKrupp Steel Europe, and they have submitted a non-binding offer for the same. For Gujarat Fluoro, they have launched a block deal. The promoter is going to sell up to 13 lakh shares at a floor price of rupees 3,500 per share. Moving on to Dream Folks, though, the services of the domestic airport lounges have been discontinued to the company's clients effective from the 16th of September, and the impact will be material of this action. And the other domestic services and global lounge businesses will continue as usual, but this is a negative development for Dream Folks. Apart from this, TVS Holdings will be in focus. They are going to consider the issuance of preference shares by way of a bonus issue on the 22nd of September. Blue Dart has, the arm of the company has received a show cause notice for GST commissions worth 365 crores. Apart from this, Bharat Electronics will be in focus. They have received additional orders worth rupees 712 crores since their last disclosure on the 1st of September. Mahindra Lifespaces is going to redevelop 2 housing societies in Chembur with a combined development potential of 1,700 crores.
All right. Thank you so much for bringing us all of those details, Ria. But let's put the spotlight on India and United States and their relationship. They've termed their first in-person talks since the 50% tariffs levy as positive. Now, USA's top negotiator Brendan Lynch met Rajesh Agrawal, who is India's chief negotiator in New Delhi. Parikshit is joining in with more details on this. Parikshit.
These were the first in-person talks between Brendan Lynch, the chief negotiator from the US Trade Representative's Office, and Special Secretary in India's Commerce Ministry, Rajesh Agrawal, since the 17th of July, when the 5th round of trade negotiations were concluded. There have been virtual rounds of discussion in the last few weeks, but things had taken a really tense turn ever since the US imposed a 25% additional penalty tariff on the 6th of August. Some very sharp rhetoric coming in from US leaders, which had strained India-US relations. But things have started healing over the last 2 weeks with some very positive messaging and signaling from both sides, especially by President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, which has put the negotiations on a positive track. Having said that, the negotiators met for about 6 hours in the Commerce Ministry in Delhi, which is known as the Vanijya Bhavan. Both sides have described the negotiations as positive. The Indian Commerce Ministry saying that the discussions were forward-looking, covering various aspects of the trade deal, and both sides will now intensify efforts to achieve an early conclusion of a mutually beneficial trade agreement. the US Embassy also calling the talks positive and saying that both sides discuss the next steps in the trade negotiations. We're told that the discussions will now continue in the virtual mode, and effort would be to try and find common ground in the next few weeks.
Well, thank you so much, Parikshit. Finally, some good news, but let's step into a very short break. Up next, we get you all the cues from Wall Street, so stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now, in the US market, stocks edged slightly lower as investors book profits ahead of a highly weighted Federal Reserve interest rate decision. Now, the S&P 500 traded 0.13% lower after hitting a fresh record earlier in the session. The Nasdaq lost almost 0.1%, while Dow Jones was down almost 0.3%. But all eyes turn to the Federal Reserve outcome later today, and respondents expect Trump's Fed pressure campaign will lead to higher inflation, weaker growth. CNBC's Steve Leisman brings us the details on what to expect.
Considerable disagreement among respondents to the CNBC Fed survey, not over what the Fed's going to do, but what they should do, and growing concern over President Trump's intentions for Federal Reserve independence. Here's the Fed expectations chart. 97% think the Fed's going to cut by 25, but only 41% think the Fed should cut by that amount. 62% say Federal Reserve Governor Cook will remain on the Fed. In other words, the president will not be successful, is the expectation, in firing her. 55% say CEA Chair Stephen Miron's unpaid leave from the CEA chair is inappropriate. And 82% say President Trump is trying to limit or eliminate Federal Reserve independence. When it comes to what respondents believe the president's intentions are for Fed independence, 41% say limit it, 41% say eliminate it. Just 10% think the Fed is supporting it. For the record, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Stephen Miron have supported Fed independence in public comments. But the effects of these presidential actions, 68% believe it will lead to higher inflation, 57% believe it will lead to higher unemployment, 54% believe it will lead to lower economic growth, and a division there over whether it means higher or lower interest rates, but 74% say it will mean a lower value to the U.S. dollar. Okay, what about when it comes to the meeting today? 41% think a 25 basis point cut is appropriate, but 28% think the Fed should cut 50. 28% say the Fed shouldn't cut at all. This mirrors disagreements we know about on the Fed over the right policy in the face of somewhat higher inflation, but flagging job growth. Our 29 respondents put the current 2025 year-end funds rate at 3.6%. That's down about 30 basis points from our July survey, you can see there. And then a pretty good drop for 2026, down to 3.13. What's important about that number is the long run rate is 3.2%. So the belief that the Fed gets relatively quickly by the end of next year to the terminal or long run rate. Last night, as you said, an appeals court cleared the way for Fed Governor Lisa Cook to remain on the Fed board, rejecting the administration's attempt to overturn an injunction on President Trump's firing. And CEA Chair Stephen Miron approved by the Senate. So a full slate of 12 voters will take up the issues, not only of what the Fed does today, but what it signals for future policy. Worth pointing out, there's little sign of these concerns about Fed independence in either the bond or the stock market, and I suppose that's another conversation to have.
Well, absolutely, Steve. But moving on then, let's focus in on the world of commodities. Manisha Gupta is joining us with all the updates from there. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, and thank you for that. Well, I'll start with gold prices because the prices here have hit yet another all-time high, and this time around we are above $3,700 an ounce. 3,703 to be exact is what gold has done as an all-time high. Well, the U.S. rate cut of 25 basis points have been factored in, and as was being spoken, more U.S. Fed rate cuts in this year and in the first quarter of 2026 is what the markets are anticipating right now. So ahead of the U.S. Fed meeting announcement, you have the dollar index, which is now trading at a 2-month lows. The decline in dollar index, the expectation of a rate cut, and the markets anticipating some concerns also rising from geopolitics. all has been very, very supportive for gold. And add to that the fact that you have seen very strong investment in ETFs, buying also from global central banks. All of that has led gold prices higher. I also want to talk about the crude oil prices because that is that OPEC plus 22 member group meeting in Vienna on Thursday and Friday, where they will discuss production capacities. So markets have seen some support ahead of that as well. Also, Ukraine intensifying drone attacks on Russian refineries, export facilities also has been quite supportive. And then the street is also reacting to the U.S. crude inventories, which have seen a decline. So all in all, a very positive start for many commodities in Asia.
Well, absolutely. New highs continue for gold. Thank you so much for bringing us all of those details, Manisha. But let's dip into a very short break. Up next, we focus on all the reforms and changes that India has gone through under PM Modi's leadership as we celebrate his 75th birthday today.
भारत ने दुनिया को युद्ध नहीं बुद्ध दिए ज्ञान में अध्यात्म में गरिमा में अन्नदान में संगीत में शाश्वत कविताओं में हमारा देश भारत पूरे विश्व में सबसे महान है
As Prime Minister Narendra Modi turns 75 today, wishes poured in from across the country and around the world, with political leaders, party workers and citizens expressing their gratitude and well wishes for him. Now under PM Modi, India has become a global leader, balancing strength and diplomacy. CNBC TV 18's Abhimanyu explains how PM's strategy made India a global power.
India has clinched several milestones in the trade and foreign policy space in the over 11-year period of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership. Here is a brief overview. On the security front, India retaliated to Pakistan's repeated terror attacks by conducting precision strikes on terror camps in POK, Balakot and recently during Operation Sindoor. During the unprecedented COVID pandemic, India emerged as the world's pharmacy by exporting medicines to dozens of countries and continues to supply generic drugs to developing as well as developed countries across the world. India, as the world's largest democracy, has been raising concerns on behalf of the developing world before several international fora. It convened the first Voice of Global South Summit in January 2023 to focus international attention on priorities, perspectives and concerns of the developing world. In September 2023, India successfully hosted the G20 summit and ensured a communique despite differences between several participating nations over the Russia-Ukraine war. Deepening of strategic relations has also been exemplified in increasing defense ties with both the US and Russia. In a deeply divided geopolitical scenario, India has maintained cordial relations with several sparring countries and blocs while advocating for global peace and development. PM Modi's recent visit to the SEO summit in China and India's engagement with the Russia-led EU bloc has also displayed the country's willingness to engage in trade into newer geographies to benefit jobs as well as exporters across the country. It has signed FTAs with Mauritius, UAE, Australia and the UK during this period and is currently negotiating a BTA with the US, FTAs with the EU, Oman, Chile, Peru, New Zealand and Sri Lanka, and is negotiating an upgraded trade agreement with Australia and is reviewing the existing trade arrangements with the ASEAN bloc and Korea.
Well, thank you so much for that, Abhimanyu. Over to Shivani now to understand the most important economic reforms made under the leadership of PM Modi. Shivani?
Well, yes, Narendra Modi's 3 terms as Prime Minister have been defined by bold, large-scale economic reforms aimed at making India a modern, digital and globally competitive economy. One of the first big reforms was GST in 2017, replacing dozens of state and central taxes with a single one. This created a common national market, reduced evasion and simplified compliance, especially for MSMEs. At the same time, Jan Dhan Yojana brought over 450 million bank accounts into the system, enabling direct transfers workers, digital payments, and true financial inclusion. Combined with ease of doing business reforms, India's global ranking jumped from 142 to 63 in 5 years. Now, in the second term, reforms went deeper. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code cleaned up the banks, while Labour Code simplified over 40 laws into 4, balancing worker protection with global business needs. During the pandemic, Atmanirbhar Bharat and PLI program boosted local manufacturing, agriculture and MSMEs, generating jobs and reducing import dependence. And then a 1 lakh crore rupee R&D fund further fueled startups and high-tech innovation. Now, in the third term, the focus is on future technologies and sustainability. The semiconductor mission is building a chip ecosystem, while the India AI mission, with over 10,000 crore rupees of outlay, is powering startups and research. Simplified income tax rules, an ambitious clean energy goal of 500 gigawatt by 2030, and also the EV policies are positioning India as a global green tech hub. So, from GST to Jan Dhan to PLI, AI, semiconductor and clean energy, PM Modi's reforms are deep, structural and future-ready. They empower millions of entrepreneurs, innovators and workers, laying the foundation for India's long-term growth story. Back to you.
Well, thank you so much for that, Shivani. But US President Donald Trump also dialed PM Modi for birthday wishes. In a post on X, Modi thanked Trump and referred to the trade deal talks that resumed just hours earlier. Like you, I am also fully committed to taking the India-US comprehensive and global partnership to new heights. He added, we support your initiatives towards a peaceful resolution of the Ukraine conflict. President Trump later made a similar post on Truth Social. Just had a wonderful call with my friend Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I wished him a very happy birthday. He is doing a tremendous job. Narendra, thank you for your support on ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. Well, that's all the action we have on this edition of Power Breakfast. Don't go anywhere. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.